I feel like I have some pretty solid Fundie credentials.
You do. You do. You have like all the badges. You've got like the like
Yeah.
Awana's best of them. You do. Cynane, thank you so much for joining me on Growing Up Fundie. I'm super excited to have you on the podcast. First of all, how are you doing?
I'm great. I'm so happy to meet you and to be here. This is awesome.
I'm stoked to talk to you. I was reading over the information that you submitted, and I'm super curious to learn kind of a little bit about your background. You said that you grew up, you're formerly evangelical, correct?
Yes. I feel like I have some pretty solid Fundie credentials.
You do. You do. You have like all the badges. You've got like the like
Yeah.
Awana's best of them. You do.
Like a Girl Scouts club I did not want to be in. Yeah, so I'm from Florida, and like that's the end of the episode. But I grew up in like kind of like a non-denominational Christianity,
Which
so
always
like
means Baptist.
which always means Baptist. So
Always.
like Calvary chapels. It's like Baptists with like board shorts, and like it's a church from like California, and so like everybody's gorgeous, and like they're very casual. They have like a rock band, like it's very cool. Everybody's hip and cool and young, and that was the church that like my family went to growing up, and the school that I went to in elementary and middle school was like a private Christian school. And again, it was
Interesting.
attached to a different non-denominational Christian church. So that was also like the same thing. And then and that one, that school was the mascot was the Patriot, like a 1776 like Revolutionary War patriot.
Cool.
And we had like a not cool. We had a Plymouth Day every year where half the children would dress as Native Americans.
I was afraid you were going to say that. I was afraid you were going to say that.
Yep. And the other half would be pilgrims, of course.
Okay.
And like our 8th grade like graduation field trip, big hoopla, was like a trip to Boston so that we could further worship the founding fathers. And so that was like the school that I was in. It was like a very like fundamentalist like Christian school. They advertised like
it sounds like just a Republican school, to be honest.
Exactly. Like it was like it was a white Christian nationalist school.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
It was like a private school, and it was just like for people who couldn't homeschool their kids. People who couldn't afford to homeschool or like didn't have the capacity to homeschool their children. It was like, we will indoctrinate them for you. And the other circle, it was kind of like 3 spheres of influence, was an honest to goodness Southern Baptist church. And that's where like my absolute best friend ever went. And so I went to youth groups there, like from middle through high school. And my older relatives, like my great aunt and great uncle, that's the church that they went to. So, and it was a very small town. So like all of these, like the 3 spheres of influence, like totally overlapped. Like kids who were going to the school were also going to the church, were also going to the youth group. Like, it was a small town. I looked it up, and it was like, it's like 16,000 people.
Wow.
Which is like, there's definitely smaller towns, but
that's pretty small.
It's not large. And we were in an even much more insular community within that. Because like I never met anybody who was not a white Christian nationalist growing up. Like, I don't think I ever met a Democrat. Democrat was a slur, and like basically like they were like the boogeyman. Like you were like afraid of them, like you can't be a real Christian if you're not a Republican. And they are like trying to invoke this like satanic communist overtaking of the United States. Like maybe not in so many words, but that was the picture painted.
I mean, that's what I was told, kind of.
Yeah. I mean, you're from Arkansas, right? So,
right. Like, checks out. Yeah.
You get it. And so that was just kind of like how I grew up, and like everything was totally normalized. Like none of that was, I never thought any of it was weird. Everybody I knew was a part of this. And then the other like pretty big, and talk about purity culture, like just Mondo purity culture.
Yep.
And it's in Florida. It's like 1 billion degrees at all times of the year. So like you try to put me in a floor length skirt and I'm biting someone.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, it was always like, you have to keep your shoulders covered, or like, depending on which group you were in, the
Right.
standard was totally different because it's totally
Right.
subjective, of like the 2 finger widths below the collarbone, or like, you know, like the skirt to your fingertips length, or like skirts to the knees, or like no
Yeah.
skirts, you have to wear pants, like, or no pants, you have to wear skirts. Like it was different everywhere you went, but there was a massive IBLP influence in my hometown.
Yikes.
And for anybody who hasn't, like, is not up on that, obviously the Shiny Happy People documentary on, I want to say Amazon Prime, incredible. But my absolute best friend growing up, her family was like heartily into this. Like I remember seeing Bill Gothard VHS tapes, and I don't know why that impressed on my memory so much, but it did. Like I didn't even really know the name Bill Gothard, but I remember seeing those. And especially at the Baptist church that I went to, most of the girls that I grew up with there were much more into that. Higher education was like good, but it was kind of like an accessory. Like, you know, you want to be accomplished to attract a husband.
Get that MRS degree.
Right. Not to actually like seek an education or like a career out of anything that wasn't like traditional gender roles. And so all of those girls, I remember the summer that I turned 12, they all went to an IBLP summer camp. Like literally, it's a small town, it's a small social circle. All the girls I knew, like there was 2 sisters from one family, 3 sisters from another family, my best friend, another girl. So like, you know, like over close to a dozen girls probably were all going to this, like this camp one summer. And I remember my mom, because my family was not in any of the IBLP stuff. It was just like everyone I knew was.
Right.
And I remember mom asking me like, hey, like, do you want to go? And I was like 12, and my friend had advertised it to me as like, oh, it's a all girls camp. You get to learn how to cook and clean and sew. And those are all good things to know how to do.
Right.
I enjoy cooking and sewing, not so much cleaning, but she told me that the dress code was floor length skirts. And I was just like, no. And my mom was just like,
for summer camp. That's wild.
Where it was all girls. And I was like, why do we like, there's no boys like, to, you know, to cause to stumble. But my mom was just like, okay, good. You know, like didn't push it at all. Like she wasn't really into any of that, but like, and that was kind of like, it was like a weird 1 foot in, 1 foot out situation. Cause my family wasn't a part of a lot of this. And on the spectrum of like white evangelical nationalist, I think that like you can be more one than another. And I feel like
totally. Yeah.
And my family was all of them, like 100%, like all in. My parents sent me to that private Christian school because they wanted us to be like white evangelical nationalists and to protect us from like secular education and everything. But I do feel like they were a little bit more white nationalist than my friends were, maybe more like on the more evangelical, like more IBLP evangelical. Because my mom was a firefighter, and she was like in the first wave of female firefighters, like in a time when women were not firefighters. And like, she had a really, really hard time.
I bet.
As one of the first women, like it's a whole thing. But, you know, and I kind of grew up knowing a little bit about that. And as I got older, I learned more about it. And so, and she had a previous life experience. You know, I think she'd always been raised Christian, but like I feel like after she had kids, she got like much more fundamentalist and like got very much more serious about this, and like was just very concerned about like raising us right.
Yeah.
But she had lived on her own. She'd been proposed to like 8 times or something. Like,
okay.
Yeah. Queen.
But mom reveal, show what she looks like.
But she had abusive relationships and things too. And she had known other women who had been in abusive relationships that ended even worse than like hers had. And so she always told me like, never trust a man. like
Yeah.
get an education. A man can always leave you. Like,
Yes.
even if you are married for
Yep.
15 years and you have 3
Yep.
kids together, like he can always leave you. So like
Always.
have something to fall back on, always have like something of yourself. And she, was very adamant that like we get an education. And I was always like the kid who was good at school anyway. And so I was just like, oh, okay. The colleges will be checking my kindergarten transcripts. So I must have straight A's. And so that was a message that literally nobody that I knew was getting.
Wow.
My best friends, all these girls who were going to the IBLP training centers every summer, they were being told that like once your goal in life is basically to save yourself for your God-chosen husband, a man will magically appear and you will be married and you will live a perfectly blissful life, and like everything will be perfect as long as you are righteous. And
Yes.
that's just like not fucking reality.
No,
So
not at all.
I don't think that until, more recently, I realized how much of a divide there was kind of in the messaging that we were getting at home.
Yes.
And the advantage that I received from that, because I got to go to a real school. I went to the University of Florida, and I got a degree in nuclear engineering, which is like
Queen.
STEM,
That's cool. That's
just
really
like
cool.
all math. And
Wow.
while I was there at UF, my best friend, the one who was like more IBLP involved, she was teaching English in Taiwan for several years through an IBLP program.
I was going to say, that sounds on brand. That sounds like teach them
Mhm.
how to speak English so you can teach them about Christ and
Literally.
Jesus and the Bible. Yeah. Yeah.
And
for
they
sure.
lived in like some sort of like group situation, and
Commune.
like there were dress codes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
And like all of the people that she was living with and all of her friends there were coming from IBLP situations that were probably much more IBLP involved than like
Wow.
our community even was. Like
Yeah.
I knew a couple families who like didn't believe in birth control, very like Duggar-esque, but
Yeah.
the people that she was there with sounded like they were worse. And
Yeah.
so she did that. I went to school. I was fully indoctrinated through all of undergrad. And, I went to college, lived with a girl from my hometown for the entire time. And, like you're raised in so much fear. And, like you were told that like Democrats are evil and that like the world is going to try to trick you and deceive you, and you have to be on guard and you have to guard yourself. And you just don't have like, it definitely like, in hindsight, like it's one of my biggest regrets is that I, did not take full advantage of the first couple of years of college.
Same.
Because like, one, I'm socially awkward. Like I got a degree in nuclear engineering for a reason. Those are my people. But then like two, like you're afraid to meet people because you don't know like, oh, if they're not a Christian. And, I was always like the goody and like get straight A's and like do what you're told. And, I didn't like being told to like, put on a jacket or like wear a longer skirt or whatever. But like, I was told that like your sexuality is tied directly to your spirituality. And if you commit a sexual sin, then you are literally damaging your soul. And I was like, oh, okay, those are the rules. I just won't do anything bad. And like, they just continued to treat us like we were like Jezebel, like these sex possessed like demon girls. And I'd like never held a boy's hand.
Like
but
you would have, if God wasn't watching, you would have ruined him. You would have held his hand and you would have destroyed his future. And then you would get pregnant and then you would die.
Literally. Oh my God. That's
go to hell.
Line from was it Mean Girls? You'll get chlamydia and you'll die.
Yes. I totally forgot about that. That's hilarious.
Like, bought into it. I was like, I will die. And so like, whenever any of my friends were like made a new friend, it was like talking to a new boy or something, I'd be like, are they a Christian? Like, is that new boy gonna like wait until marriage? Like I was on board.
They literally make you think that like boys are out here just waiting to like snatch your virginity. Just like, oh, got it. Just got it. Because you you let me into your house, took your virginity. There, like I remember thinking that. Like my mom never told me that, but the church made me think that. They made me think boys were out here just like, you know, like in Finding Nemo, and the shark's eyes like go black when he smells blood. Like that's what they made me think boys were out here doing if they saw ankles and shit.
Yeah. Don't let them know you have legs. And there's so many layers to that, because again, it's white evangelical nationalism is not just evangelicalism. It's not just white supremacy or like Republican nationalism. It's like all of them together, because there were those messages. But at the same time, like, especially from like my family, again, more on like the nationalist side of things, and my mom was a firefighter. She like just the fear mongering around crime. And it's like, oh, they're trying to snatch your virginity, but like also you will be raped and murdered. Like if you go to the mall, or God forbid you go to the fair, like, oh my God. Like it was not an if statement. It was like a when, like when this happens, like, and, yeah, so like that was like I was all in. I was, you know, whatever. And then I graduated. I basically made it through like the Obama years like completely oblivious. I was not paying attention to politics at all. I had no idea what was going on. Like I was just like kind of focused on school.
Girl,
and
just be glad you weren't the person walking around going, I don't like Obama. And when people ask you why, you just go, I just cuz. That was me. That was me.
No, I'm pretty sure I made similar statements. I'm just
like,
regurgitating what my parents had said.
Yep. It's so embarrassing. It's like, because I just like asking you why is like the equivalent of calling you a dumbass. It's like, I just don't like him. I don't have to explain anything to you. I have things to do. Like look it up, read a book. And you're like, how about you first? So you can find out why you don't like Obama.
Yeah. I honestly, like, I didn't think it didn't come up too much, but I do remember one interaction when I was in like the 10th grade, and one of the guys in my like homeroom who was politically aware, I guess, was saying something about it. And I was just like, I don't know, like my dad said that like he was born in Kenya and that's not allowed. So
just in general, just as a whole, it's just not allowed. Just don't be born in Kenya, no matter who you are.
You know, just like regurgitating like what they had said. And like it was I also remember being 18 years old. I'm now old enough to vote, and having a conversation with parents, maybe just my mom, I don't remember, but and being like, I don't know who these candidates are. Like, I don't know anything about politics. Like, I don't feel informed enough to vote. And basically the message was like, well, we'll tell you who to vote for. Like, don't worry about it. You don't need to know. You don't need to inform yourself. We will always tell you who the Christian candidate is.
Oh, yes.
And then I remember the Trump Hillary election. And at this point, I think I was in college for that. But I did not vote just because I was super busy with school and stuff. And then also like Hillary was apparently the Antichrist. And
facts.
True facts. Nobody was expecting to be a woman. And then
that's hilarious.
And then Trump was, you know, like grabbing people by the pussies. So I was like, I'm just like not gonna vote. I'm gonna sit this one out.
Sorry, I just pictured like him just like grabbing people on the street. By the
He's just trying to snatch that virginity. Like,
yes, there it is. Got it. You didn't look. Now Trump got it. Be careful, ladies.
No, that would be the worst case scenario. I'm sorry for anybody who's slept with Trump. And then
R.I.P.
Yeah. But the next election was so wait, no. So it was when Trump took office. It was January of some year, and Obama. It was going from Obama to Trump, and there were a couple of moments like growing up where like I felt like conspiracy theories were totally normalized, like totally just like in the milieu of my youth, and I never really questioned them.
Word.
Yeah.
Good word. That was nice.
It's a good word.
It is.
But there were like a few growing up where I was like, that something's a little bit off there. Something's a little bit off there. And like one of them was that when Obama passed the torch to Trump, my parents were visiting for like that weekend, like when it was happening. And at this point, I am now working for the Navy. I'm a civilian contractor. And the apartment that I lived in, I like the door across from me was this Navy officer who was in the same program that I was in. And I mean, this kid is like fresh out of college. All right. So like he's not a high up. But my parents come to visit and they love to talk to strangers because they're just like old people from Florida and they love to talk to strangers. And I usually am just happy for the reprieve. And my mom's like chattering away at this guy, and out of nowhere, all of a sudden she's just like, is it true that when Obama refuses to pass power onto Trump and declares himself to be the Muslim king of the United States, is it true that the that the true seat of power for true America shifts to the chief nuclear admiral, and that admiral is the one who gets to decide when to nuke the White House?
I don't know if I should be impressed or scared or both, or should I? That is a good question. Who does it go to if it's not the Muslim president king of the United States? That's a great question. I feel like I should have learned that.
Yes. And I had never heard this before. She had never said this to me before. So I was taken totally off guard. She'd never said anything quite that crazy before. And she's talking to this guy that I work with, and I'm like, I'm gonna lose my security clearance.
No joke.
And this poor kid, he was from Texas. And I think this is just like, it was like the cherry on top. It was honestly like hilarious in hindsight. But he was just like, he was so polite. And he was like, well, ma'am, I don't rightly know.
That is such a Texas answer. That is such a Texas answer.
And I like ushered them. I rushed them away, and I was like, oh my God. I get them into my apartment. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you can't just be saying these insane things to people. Like, and then both of them, my dad hadn't said anything, but they both turn on me and they're just like, how dare you tell us like what we can and cannot say? Like, we will talk to whoever we want to talk about.
Boomer be disrespectful. Parents love that stuff. They love to not address the issue and just instead be like, actually, you're being disrespectful.
Your tone.
Like, your tone. Forget what I said. I am a grown-up. I will say what I want. Thank you.
Who's nuking the White House? Okay. I have serious questions.
Yes. When the White House gets nuked and you don't know who did it, you'll have wished that he answered my question. So
meanwhile, again, this child is like 22 years old. I was like, Mom, why would you think that he would know that? So so I mean, that was like one thing. And then there was like another thing where we were I have a degree in nuclear engineering. I mean, at this point, I think I was in school for nuclear engineering, but nuclear engineering. Okay. All right. And we're at a farmer's market in South Florida with my family in this small town. They're old. They're talking to other old people, blah, 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 running around. And my mom, and this all comes from YouTube. Her like that last episode came from YouTube. This comes from like the day that she discovered YouTube was literally the end of my life. But basically, she was telling people like matter of factly that this was right after Fukushima had happened, which was the Japanese nuclear power plants that had the above design basis earthquake and tsunami. And there was like release into the ocean and things. And this was like near that time. And she was running around telling people that all of the radiation and contamination.
You just made me realize I don't know whatever happened with that. You literally just made me realize I never like that just disappeared out of the
they had to like clear out a zone of like where people can't like live, and I'm not up on like the current controls, but it's it was one of the most severe nuclear accidents that have ever happened in like, world history. That's why
I'm like, how did
it wasn't a Chernobyl, but there was a significant release into the environment, and it did affect people who lived in the area. But the conspiracy theory then was that all of the contamination had leaked out of the reactor into the ocean. It was like now traveling in the ocean from Japan to the west coast of the United States, where all of the fish were melting. The contamination was being picked up by evaporation into the rain. This radioactive rain is now raining across the entire west coast of the United States, contaminating all of the grass and all of the cattle, and all of our food was going to become radioactive, and we were moving into like a nuclear famine. Nationwide, worldwide. And my mom is just like casually discussing this with people, like while buying tomatoes and things. And I'm following them around, and I am in school for nuclear engineering. And I'm like, no.
You're like, I promise you, that is not what's going on right now.
And they didn't give a shit. You know, they were just like, no, dear, we watch YouTube. And
forget your degree. We have YouTube. You could learn a thing or two, actually.
Yeah. Watch your tone. And so like those were little, like there was a one of them that got me. Like there was a YouTube video that like said that Beyonce was possessed by a demon named Sasha Fierce.
I mean, she is.
I mean, we love Sasha, but
we do.
But you know, like just like these little like weird nuggets of conspiracy theories and things that were like, those were like extreme, and I remember them because they were extreme. But like the stuff about like Obama being a secret Muslim, and Bill Clinton, I don't know,
also
I don't know why they hated him. Also, everybody's a secret Muslim.
Yep.
I don't know what their deal was, but like all of that stuff was just like that, you know, you didn't really question it because it was like everyone was saying it, and like it was a conspiracy theory, but like it was just so normal that you didn't call it that. And then 2020 happened, and like literally that changed everything for me. Because like I said, I was pretty much like indoctrinated fully through all of this until 2020.
What changed it for you about 2020?
The conspiracy theories. So basically there was a huge, I mean, like I've dug deep into the history of QAnon and all of the conspiracy theories around that, the anti-vaxxer movement, the COVID denialism, the voter fraud, the you know, Jewish space lasers and hydroxychloroquine, and like all of this. And basically, are you familiar? Do you know like what QAnon is?
I'm from Arkansas. Of course I know what QAnon is. What are you talking about? I live in Nashville, Tennessee. Of course I know what QAnon is.
So, well, again, and I feel like everybody knows what it is at this point, but just in case, QAnon is a conspiracy theory. It actually started in October of 2017 on a website called 4chan.
Oh, interesting. That long ago. I didn't realize that.
It was early into the Trump presidency.
Interesting.
And it started on a website called 4chan, which, you know what Reddit is?
I have a love-hate relationship with Reddit. I sure do.
So 4chan, most people know what Reddit is. Yes. Not everybody knows what the rest of it is. But like 4chan is the less moderated version of Reddit. So like you can say more.
That's a good way to put it. That's a good way to put it.
8chan was an even less moderated version of 4chan. And this was actually started by a 15-year-old named Frederick Brennan, who was an absolute free speech activist, I guess, like a believer. And so he believed that there should be no moderation and that people should be able to say whatever they want on the internet all the time. And so he created 8chan. And QAnon started on 4chan in the October 2017. Within a month, it very quickly moved to 8chan, and then it lived on 8chan for several years. And 8chan is where all of the neo-Nazis and pedophiles on the internet lived because it was completely unmoderated.
Wow.
And QAnon, so it was like and again, like I exist with engineers, so like all of this, like I kind of was aware of, but like most normal people I feel like are not. And I've
never heard of 8chan. That's new to me. That sounds scary as hell. Yeah, that sounds real, because Reddit can be scary enough.
Well, it doesn't exist. 8chan doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, good.
We'll get to that. Well, kind of, but so like on these websites, these message boards, they have like jokes. Most of the memes that normal people see on like Instagram and Facebook were originally developed on these like nerd boards, and they like leak their way up to the surface. But they have like these inside jokes and like the like nerd language and like code that they all talk in, and it's all just like a big joke. And one of the jokes, the trolls that like was popular was that they would somebody would pretend to be a part of a major corporation or government agency and pretend to be like a top agent leaking information. So there was like a CIA anon and an FBI anon and a state trooper anon and like all of these different like, and like they would always end in an anon because it's like anonymous. And they would be like, I'm in the CIA and like here's the secret information that I have, and then like 3 people would like believe it and it'd be this big joke. Until somebody did this with QAnon, and Q is and it's so stupid because I'm pretty sure it's a DOE, Department of Energy designation for a top secret security clearance, Q level security clearance. And so there was somebody pretending to have this Q level security clearance, QAnon. I had
no idea. I didn't know where that came from. I'm learning so much right now.
Yeah. And you know, I am familiar with all of these things because I work in the Navy in the nuclear propulsion training program. And so they were saying that they were like a top level Q level security clearance person with direct connection to Donald Trump, who was the president at the time, and that they were working with him. And the core of the conspiracy theory is that there is a secret cabal of satanic elites who are pulling the strings of global governments and economies in order to drive us towards like a one world order, which is very like evangelical end timesy. And or they are running, and none of this is true, but and or they are running.
Trigger warning. None of this is true, by the way. None of this. In case we weren't clear enough, none of it is true.
Nobody's nuking the White House either. But the global cabal is also trafficking children, like human child sex trafficking, hundreds of thousands of children. There's so many different spin-offs of the conspiracy theory. Some say that like they are being bred in tunnels under every major city. So we're literally talking about mole children.
Came from?
So Pizzagate actually predates QAnon. So
I was gonna say, I thought that was a while ago.
That was in 2016, before Trump became the president. They were obsessed with the Hillary Clinton emails and were convinced that there was like secret code in the emails talking about child sex trafficking, and that children were being trafficked in the basement of this like Washington DC pizza parlor. And it actually
real pizza parlor, by the way, people.
It was. And they actually had one guy go into that pizza parlor with a massive like assault rifle. And I don't know if he shot the gun in there or not, but I think he might have. And then a second guy, like months or years later, tried to burn it down. So there was an attempted arson there because people believed that there were like there was a child sex trafficking ring in the basement. But basically the QAnon belief is that like the cabal is like trafficking these children. And it's not just to be human traffickers, but it's also to harvest adrenochrome, which is an actual substance. It actually exists. You might be able to buy it on Amazon. I don't know, but it's like it's oxidized adrenaline, and they believe that like these children are being ritualist, like satanic rich. This is like so many trigger warnings. I'm sorry, satanic ritualistic sacrifice, like to a demon god. At the height of their terror, so that they can extract as much adrenaline out of their blood as possible. And then this is either some sort of like anti-aging drug and or like just like a wicked high. But none of this is true. This is all ridiculous.
Right. But I just never heard this side of it before.
This is the heart of QAnon. This is what people are like. You read all of these articles. This is the hard version of it. So, and this is what happened is that like this was living on the deep, dark recesses of 8chan on the internet. Oh, and to go back to 8chan just very quickly, because like I just think everything is so connected and like everything is so indicative of how bad things actually are. 8chan was removed from the internet. It was banned from the internet in 2019 because it was directly connected to at least three different mass shootings, racially motivated mass shootings. So the Christchurch shooting, I want to say that was in New Zealand, like 58 or so people died. There was an El Paso shooting that was targeting the Christchurch, I think, was targeting Islamic people. The El Paso shooting was targeting, it was in a largely Hispanic area. And then there was like a Jewish synagogue shooting in California. And each one of them, especially the first one, they posted a manifesto to 8chan before or in some connection to 8chan before they went out and like murdered a whole bunch of people. And so, and they were posting these like on neo-Nazi boards,
Yeah.
and the people commenting on them were like cheering them on and like saying like how great this was. And so the people who ran 8chan literally had to like testify before Congress because like their website was connected to so many like mass shootings, and like it was eventually taken down off the internet. And from what we know or what we suspect, people have done some like linguistic analysis on all of the Q drops. They think that they know who Q is. It may have switched hands at certain points over the years, but the guy who was running 8chan, it's like a father and a son. They think that like one or both of them were involved with Q. Super fun for us because the son then ran for the House of Representatives, and I want to say the state of Arizona. He did not win, but
I was going to say, please tell me. I was about to Google what happened to him. Where'd he go?
No, he didn't win, but like literally Q himself ran for public office in the United States, and like nobody knows about this.
Wow.
So that's all basically what you call being hard pilled.
Right.
You know, like you're talking about mole children, you're talking about adrenochrome, like you're talking about like the worst of the worst. This is also very, very deeply connected to anti-Semitism, like on an atomic granular level, because it's literally so exactly how QAnon just kind of like regurgitated and plagiarized the Pizzagate conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
They also just like plagiarized the Protocols of the Elders of Zion conspiracy theory, which is like are you familiar with this?
No, I mean, I've heard of it, but I don't know about it.
So this is all just like so important. I feel like everybody needs to know about this.
So important. Yeah.
Because it has connections to so many things and like history. So basically, and I don't have the dates off the top of my head, but there was a French satirical political pamphlet that was released sometime in, I want to say, the 1800s. And years or decades later, somebody in like Eastern Europe took this French political satire pamphlet, plagiarized it, swapped out the bad guys for Jews, and then republished it as the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. The Elders of Zion being this happened in like the late early 1900s.
Wow.
And it's this conspiracy that there is a global cabal of evil elites who are pulling the strings of global governments and economies in order to drive to the one world order. And it's also like performing satanic ritual abuse. And it's literally QAnon.
Oh, is that where all this like Jews control Hollywood stuff came from, basically?
So that was, if you look up the Protocols of the Elders of Zion on the official like Holocaust Museum website, it literally describes this document as like the single worst anti-Semitic publication in human history. Like it has done so much harm. And then it's also tied to actually a medieval conspiracy theory that was called blood libel, where there was actually some sort of like monk, like a Franciscan monk or a Byzantine monk, who like got really excited about this and like published a book and like just ruined the world, saying that Jews were kidnapping Christian children and or priests and sacrificing them in ritualistic blood sacrifice, satanic blood sacrifices. So you have like, and that's been around since the 1100s.
I have heard of that one.
Yeah. So ritualistic blood sacrifices and a secret cabal of satanic elites who may or may not be Jewish. And it's just, and of course that was all very popular with like, you know, World War II Germany and Nazi. Hitler used the protocols in all of his propaganda, and it was this whole thing. So QAnon is literally like at its core anti-Semitic, at its core completely fucking delusional. And but again, that's hard pilled. And then what happened in 2020 was, and this has been going on since, 2017, it slowly moved, or rather quickly moved, from 8chan onto Reddit, which was a much more mainstream platform, and then from Reddit and YouTube onto Instagram and YouTube and Facebook. But it really, 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 really took off in 2020 because there were three things. One was COVID. So early 2020, you had COVID. It basically baked the brains of half of America. And so everybody was like, oh, like what's really going on? And so like that was kind of the first soft pill, like, oh, like why do they want us to get the vaccine? And then secondly, you had the hashtag Save the Children movement in the summer of 2020. And this was another huge soft pill, because it literally was started basically by QAnon influencers who purposefully took the hashtag Save the Children hashtag. Save the Children is a legitimate organization.
Yes.
They do good work, and these QAnon influencers stole their hashtag, started spamming it with a bunch of like misinformation and like inaccurate statistics about child sex trafficking, and put it onto like Instagram and Facebook as a purposeful soft pill like campaign. And it got all of the like Mormon and Christian mommy bloggers, because you had a bunch of these women who like, and it's in the summer of 2020. So you had Black Lives Matter going on, and you had all of these like evangelical and like Mormon women who want to feel like moral crusaders, but like are not low key, are just like racist and like can't be just a part of BLM because it's not a part of their like white evangelical nationalist, like ideology. And so the hashtag Save the Children movement gave them the opportunity to be like, oh, what's more serious than racism? Child sex trafficking. And so they hopped on to, and this is called pastel QAnon, because they took all of their already very well developed social media platforms with their like stylized like pastel inspirational quotes and like their pictures of their children, and they started like making these posts but about like QAnon stuff.
Yes.
And so,
oh my goodness, I blocked this part of society out of my memory, but you're like unlocking core memories for me.
I feel like this is like one of the things that maybe gets ignored in kind of the history of things, a little bit overshadowed by COVID and voter fraud. But this was a huge movement for QAnon. This was one of the big things that like really, really mainstreamed it. And this is when it hit me, because this is when, and then the third wave was voter fraud in the fall of 2020 in the Trump election. Voter fraud really put the nail in the coffin. And so people would fall for like, oh, I don't know about this like COVID thing, or like, oh, like, well, I'm really against child sex trafficking. And like, oh, I think that like, Trump actually won the election, and like that something else is going on. And so these are all more reasonable sounding things. And so you end up with this massive soft pill population. And then once they start looking into things, they start going on to these social media platforms that are sharing this information. It's also mixed in with more heart. Eventually you go down the rabbit hole and you radicalize yourself, and you do your own research by a bunch of people who have no idea what research is.
And I remember there was even a moment, it didn't last long, but there was a moment where it was almost like, if you support Black Lives Matter, you also support child sex trafficking. Like you can't be against both. You can't be against like the treatment of Black people, but also be against child sex. Like you had to pick one. And I remember that was like the weirdest 2 weeks of the entire internet for me. And I've been on Reddit for a long time. Like to be like, wait a second, I have to pick between who I care about more, sex trafficked children or Black people? How did this happen? Like, what is going on? Yeah, I think that was the point in 2020 when I just like stopped going on the internet for a couple weeks.
Well, this is like, that's the heart of a moral panic, all right? Because, and like, this is kind of like where I have like skipped to the end, where I've kind of gone with things, is that it's not really about like cults and conspiracy theories. It's more about totalistic ideologies and moral panics, because like if you think that like, oh, maybe there was a second shooter for JFK, or like if you maybe there's a Bigfoot, like those are like conspiracy theories. And you always had those people on the fringe, but they were never like massive movements. What we were seeing with QAnon and with the Save the Children, and like it's literally so deeply tied to just white Christian nationalism. It is just the moral panic of family values and the masculinity crisis and the white Christian patriarchy. It is just a moral panic. And that is like, it's a logical fallacy. I feel like it's like a debate tactic that they use. It's like of dichotomizing issues. Well, it has to be BLM or sex trafficking. You can't be both. And it's all about just like super oversimplifying things and giving everybody like the answer, so that they don't have to worry about things anymore. But what happened in the summer of 2020, exactly as this was super mainstreaming for the rest of the world, is when it hit me. And my Taiwan friend, the girl who was more IBLP, She was my best friend since we were 12. And it was like during the early-ish pandemic. It was in July, and it was before the vaccines came out. And I was an essential worker, so I was still going into work every day. But she was she was driving to see family in North Carolina or something. And she asked if she could stay with us on the way for like a night or two. And I was just like, I have no problem with that. There is a global pandemic. there's a panorama, and
there's a panini.
yeah. And I was like, understand that I am still going to work, so I'm still potentially exposed to like a bunch of people all the time. If you need a place to stay, it's maybe not much worse than staying in a hotel. I don't really know. You can stay with us if you want. But usually when somebody comes to visit, we do like the whole touristy thing, and we're like, oh, we're going to go out to these are our favorite restaurants, and let's go see all the sights and stuff. And I was like, obviously when you come, we're not going to be able to do that. And she was like, yeah, that's fine. It's fine. She stayed with us. The first thing she did when she got out of the car was ask if like she needed a face mask. And I was just like, yes. And she was just like, oh, this is the first time I've ever worn a face mask. It was July.
What?
It was in July. She's like, oh, we don't wear face masks in Florida. And I was just like, I'm pretty sure you do though. And
whoa.
And this is like the first thing that's out of her mouth when she gets out of the car. And I just like wasn't expecting it. I didn't really know what was
Although
going on.
she's not wrong. I didn't hear a lot of people in Florida wearing face masks. That was
Some
kind of
people did. It's not like the entire state of Florida.
I didn't see that. I never saw it, but haven't been to Florida in a while.
But she was like, did her whole face mask thing. And then like for the rest of the weekend, she was like almost annoyed that like we weren't going places and doing things, even though like we'd already talked about it. And
also,
she like made
what was open? Like nothing.
Yeah, very few things were open. I think we went to like one restaurant and we like ate outside.
Yeah.
But she was like almost annoyed. And then she was like making fun of us for taking COVID seriously. And it was just very bizarre. And it was like kind of the first time I'd interacted with anything like that before. And in hindsight, it's hard to tell these stories because like we know what it means. Yeah. But like in the moment, early-ish in the pandemic, I didn't know what it meant.
We didn't know. Yeah. None of us really knew.
I didn't know what QAnon was. I knew nothing. And she comes, I was like, well, that was kind of weird. That wasn't great. And then her other best friend, who was a girl that I had met once, who was in Taiwan with her, whose family was hardcore IBLP, was this girl who we were friends with on social media. Like I was friends with her on Instagram. I was seeing her stories and stuff. And I'm talking to my friend and I was like, oh, have you seen this girl's feed? Like what is happening? She's losing her mind. She was sharing a bunch of stuff about how like face masks were child abuse and how there was like an imminent like communist wave about to overtake the United States and how
oh god, no, we might get free healthcare if that happens. Don't let it happen.
Yeah. If only. But it was very strange, and it was like so dramatic, and it was very deeply harping on like these are end times. The rapture is going to happen any moment now. Like just going off about this. And I was like, yo, have you seen this? Like what's your friend doing? And my friend was just like not really concerned. Like she was like, oh yeah, like, I don't know. And I remember her at one point she said like, oh, so like you don't believe in any conspiracy theories? And I was like, what conspiracy theories? Like what do you want me to believe in? Like
how, like which ones are you talking about? And like, what would you prefer I believe?
Right. Like Bigfoot? Like I don't what? And it was just like it was just so weird in the moment. And then she left, and the very next day she sends me a voice message, and this voice message literally ruined my life. Because it was like, oh shit, something is wrong. Yeah. And she sent me a voice message saying like, oh, because we'd been talking about conspiracy theories, I thought you'd think that this was interesting. My best friend from the church that she went to back in our small hometown, and I know multiple families that go to this church. It's a very culty church. Like these, like I know all of these people. Like a girl that my best friend from this church in my hometown told me that when the COVID vaccines come out, the vaccine is going to be full of secret metal, and that the metal in your blood is going to interact with 5G radiation. And that will either control your mind and make you vote Democrat, or it will kill you. She wasn't sure which one.
It'll either control your mind and open it to like be receptive to other people's ideas and opinions, or you'll just fucking die. I don't know.
You'll have
Which honestly,
empathy.
I'd rather be dead. Yeah. If you wake up and you don't think Obama's a problem, miss me with that bullshit.
Oh my God, yeah, literally. And so she's like, oh yeah, like the metal in your blood is going to control your mind, and with 5G radiation. And again, I'm just like, I'm literally a nuclear engineer. And
yeah, I love how in this, nobody is asking you. That's what I love about this story is you are literally a professional in your field and nobody's asking you. They're telling you to be quiet so they can tell you what you already like know, you know, they can tell you about your business.
I just, it boggles the mind. Like literally it's years later and I'm still just like baffled. And she, and my initial response to this was like, oh, that's so funny. Like your friend read this on the internet. It's some crazy internet thing. Right. And she was like, no, my friend believes this. And at this point, this is the craziest thing I'd ever heard in my entire life. Because I didn't know what QAnon was. I was like, this is the craziest thing I'd ever heard.
Little did we know it would only get crazier from there. I feel like a narrator should come in. Like,
you can narrate my life.
This is the craziest thing I've ever heard. It was not the craziest thing she would ever hear.
Before lunch.
Yes, before noon. Yes.
So she, my reaction to this was violence. And
yeah.
I was like, you need to reconsider all of your life choices for tolerating the existence of this person, let alone being friends with them. And if anybody that you know other than me says the word radiation to you, you need to slap them and walk away. And then I said something to the effect of calling her friend a smooth brain. And she had
that's just great. I'm so sorry.
The audacity to be offended by this. And I was like, you don't get to tell me the 5G radiation is going to control my mind and expect me not to react with violence. Like you have no wrinkles in your brain. And so that exchange occurred. And like, that was the end of it. She like didn't respond any further. All she said was like, oh, I think that's a little harsh. And I was just like, I don't think so.
As harsh as the vaccine is going to be, or like less harsh than that? How harsh are we talking? Like on a scale of 1 to vaccine?
Yeah. On a scale to 1, no, 1 to like snake venom in the water supply. Like, no. But this was bad. All right. And so I started paying better attention. I started watching her Instagram feed. I would occasionally see her repost stuff that her crazy friend had been sharing.
Yeah. And like as much as we're laughing, that is heartbreaking. Like thinking of my best friend on earth, if she started posting like anti-vax, crazy conspiracy, 5G in your blood stuff, I would call the police and do a welfare check. Like that's really upsetting and traumatic to watch your friend go through.
She really got locked in on the voter fraud conspiracy theories. And like, she was following like prophets who were prophesying that Trump would win the election. And she fell for some conspiracies more. She wasn't sharing as much of like the pedophilia stuff like her friend was, but like, I think it was there. And again, I didn't know what was going on. I thought that like, oh, it's just like she'll get out. It's a phase. Like it's a weird little, she has like a hobby that like looking into these weird conspiracy theories, she'll grow out of it, like whatever. But the weekend after she visited, we got engaged. And one of the first things that I did was ask all of my bridesmaids to be bridesmaids, because like that was one of the things that I was most excited about. And she was like kind of the unofficial maid of honor. Like we weren't doing maid of honor best man, but like she was the unofficial one. And unfortunately, like this was before like we realized that things were about to get really, really bad, because she went really hard down all the conspiracy theory rabbit holes. Do you know who Sean Foyt is?
I know that name, but I don't recall why.
Put me in a room with Sean Foyt and only one of us is going to walk out. But
and it's not going to be Sean.
I mean, it might be Sean. Like I might not win in a fight, but like I'll do my best.
That's hilarious.
He is, I want to say like a Hillsong guy. Like
yep.
the mega church for like
Yes.
all of the Christian evangelical music in the
Yes.
world. He's like a huge mega church Hillsong worship person.
Yes.
And
Yep. There it is.
I want to say starting in 2020, he started, and I can't remember the name of it, but he started doing this massive tour that went on for years. Like I think it still might be going on. Tour all over the entire United States of protest revivals.
Yes, I remember this
That
now.
were essentially
Yep.
like anti-mask, anti-vax. Like
And
we're gonna
people
have a
kept dying of COVID who attended these things. I
yeah.
remember that too.
They were going like they would be places where like public concerts and events had been canceled because of the pandemic, and like Sean Foyt would show up and just like do an event anyway. And he did one of these in near my hometown, and I knew multiple families who went to this because I was seeing it on like multiple Instagram feeds. And my friend went to this, and now it's like real. Now your conspiracy theory stuff is like impacting your choices and putting people potentially in physical danger. And I messaged her about that. Once I figured out what QAnon was, I messaged her about QAnon. I was like, "Hey, look, like, oh my God, I finally figured out like where all this stuff is coming from. Like, people think Hillary Clinton is eating babies. Like, isn't that so wild? Like, oh my God." And she was just like, "I can't believe you don't believe in child sex trafficking. Seriously, do some research."
Like your whole degree, like that amount of research,
like bitch,
well,
you
like
you couldn't research if I like took a textbook and beat you with it. Yeah.
do some
So
research.
do some
Send me
research.
some links,
I can't believe
please.
you don't believe in child sex trafficking. And I was like, this was literally a text exchange. I was like, you can literally just reread the message I sent you because I didn't say that. Like, and to be clear, for for the recording here, sex trafficking, labor trafficking, adult trafficking, child trafficking, all extremely real, extremely serious problems. And the this is what makes my blood absolutely like rolling boil, and it has been for years now, is that the consequence of this moral panic of
Yep.
the absolutist mentality around
Yes.
like the fear mongering around child sex trafficking is that it is actively harming the cause of
Yes.
sex trafficking activists.
Exactly.
The thing that
Exactly.
you're so worried about, you are actively causing harm to. And
Yes.
in the summer of 2020, we had the whole like Wayfair scandal, the conspiracy theory that Wayfair was shipping children in cabinets. And
I forgot about that.
that was another thing that like really launched the hashtag Save the Children movement. But like there
Yeah.
was organizations that had to put out statements saying like, please, I'll look it up because I actually have some like written down at hand here. Because it's just so abominable. The United States National Human Trafficking Hotline was flooded with hundreds of reports around this Wayfair scandal, and said the extreme volume of these contacts has made it more difficult for the trafficking hotline to provide support and attention to others who are in need of help. And then less to do with specifically Wayfair, but just generally the hashtag Save the Children movement in the summer of 2020.
I remember that too.
Multiple law enforcement organizations had to put out statements. I think Save the Children put out a statement. Another organization called Kids Safe had to put out a statement, and I love theirs. And like, it's ridiculous that I have like a favorite. My favorite like child sex trafficking activist like QAnon statement.
Yeah.
They said QAnon promoters are parasites. Like, fuck yes. To grow their footprint and gain credibility and spread misinformation, they associate their message of hate and bigotry with well-known, well-regarded organizations, specifically those working to end child sexual abuse and sex trafficking. That strategy threatens to diminish our identities, tarnish our reputation, and harm our good works. So like, you literally had legitimate experts in the field, people who are actually working against these sorts of things, saying, please stop. They also spawned multiple crimes. And this is more anecdotal, but there was in the summer of 2020, because that's like when all of this was going on, there was several QAnon crimes specifically. Like one guy became convinced that his brother was a lizard person, and then like, trigger warning, stabbed him in the head with a sword and like murdered him. And then another guy became convinced that his children had serpent DNA. And so he took his 2 toddler age children to, I want to say, Mexico, and then murdered them with a spear gun. In 2020, a woman named Cecilia Fulbright became convinced that just like cars that were passing her were full of sex trafficked children. And so she chased down a mother and daughter in a vehicle. They were in a vehicle and they escaped. But then she immediately turned around and started chasing like this teenage girl in her car, and then rammed into her car repeatedly. And then when the cops got there, this crazy woman was just like, her car's full of sex trafficking children and like all this stuff. Another woman, there was this huge movement around this time, a big conspiracy theory that the foster care system was a part of the cabal, and that if your kids were taken into the foster care system, they were going to be sex trafficked. And so there was a bunch of people who were trying to kidnap their own children out of the foster care system because of QAnon. One woman was arrested before she could do this. Another woman became convinced that her like sovereign citizen conspiracy theory lawyer was actually a part of the cabal, and then she shot him dead before she could kidnap her kids. So like, and again, like a lot of those like anecdotal fringe events, I think are deeply connected to mental illness.
Totally.
The
like,
sword head guy had schizophrenia. The other lady had Munchausen's by proxy. Like,
but that's like why we have to have moderators. That's why it's important. That's exactly why they exist. Because you can say, well, those people had mental illness. Yes. And we are a country that is notoriously bad for how we handle mental illness. We make it too expensive to treat. We don't believe people when they say that they're suffering. Like, we are the worst country, at least first world, in terms of handling mental health. And then at the same time, we're saying, also, you don't need moderators on the internet. You should be able to say whatever you want. So it's like, yeah, people might say, oh, that was only a handful of times. How many times does it have to happen?
Right. Like, and like that's like absolutely insane. And that's just a few. There are other like murders and crimes and things. But but again, like systemically, January fucking 6th, you know, like the like the Trump presidency, like like it has major, like all of the soft pilled people are running around making decisions based off of misinformation and things as well, not just stabbing people in heads with swords.
And then there's people who don't believe it, but they recognize that they can use that platform and pretend to believe it to then get whatever they want, whether it's a spot in office, whether it's 1 million YouTube followers, whether it's a job on Fox News. Like, I feel like there's a lot of people just like megachurch pastors. I don't actually think megachurch pastors are Christians. I think they just are good business people. And there's all these people that are like, I don't actually believe what I'm about to say, but I know that if I say it, I'll get so much money, so much fame. I'll get whatever it is that I'm out for. And it's just disgusting.
Well, and that's exactly like you have, and it's not always black and white. It's not always one or the other, but you have like true believers and bad actors. You have people who see that they can take advantage of the situation, and people who are like really sucked into it. And then you have people who are kind of like in the gray area of they do believe it, but they are also taking advantage of it. And it's very difficult to say like who's exactly who, but like the end result is the same. And the end result is that like nobody got the fucking vaccine, and like people sticking metal spoons to their arms because they think that they're magnetic now. And while all of this is going on, I am trying to learn about QAnon in real time. I don't know all of this at the time. I'm gathering this information.
Right.
I'm trying to talk to my friends about it. And I talked to my 5G radiation friend, and she was just like, I can't believe you don't believe in child sex trafficking. And then I had 2 other bridesmaids from my hometown, and my hometown is my hometown. So like they're a part of it. And I was just like, hey, look, I don't understand why, but it's all of the white evangelicals who are falling for QAnon. This is what QAnon is. You're going to start to see it. I want you to like be pre-informed, be prepared to see this. And they were, I mean, one of them was pretty much like already gone. Like her mom was like sending me conspiracy theory videos about George Soros and
that's awful.
Bill Gates, like, and all of these things. And then she believed in like the Wayfair conspiracy theory, and like she listened to me though. Like I told her, I was like, hey, no, like that's a conspiracy theory. And she's like, oh, okay. She thought that Oprah Winfrey was a pedophile from some stupid video she sent to me. And I was just like, no, not from this video. Oprah Winfrey's not a pedophile. She's like, okay. Like she would listen, but like I was the only voice. And her entire life who was saying no to these things. And so like, you know, I could just tell that she wasn't spreading misinformation, but she was just scared. And she was hearing it from all of these other people. And these are other people that she trusts. You know, this is her husband, her mother, her mother-in-law. Like these are older people that she should be able to rely on. And I'm the only one who's saying no. And so she did not get vaccinated. She did not vaccinate any of her children. And my other bridesmaid, I went to her and I did the same thing. And she has been the only person that I have had any kind of like positive interaction with for the last like 3 years, this one bridesmaid. And I love her for that. And I hope that like we can kind of like fix some things with my relationship. Like once I'm working on a book about all of this, like once that's out, really it's just going to be like, see where the cards land with all of these people, including my family. But she was like, oh, I already know all about this. My aunt, again, a woman that I have known my entire life, my aunt, who was like the kingpin for the local pyramid scheme. It wasn't like
she's like rolls up in a pink Mary Kay car.
It wasn't Mary Kay. It wasn't the essential oils one. It was like another big one, but she's literally like the queen of this in our small hometown. And she's like an upstanding like person in the church, evangelical like leader, you know, well respected woman. And
I do feel like I should make a video on what the heck the connection is between evangelicals and MLM schemes.
Yes. Oh my God.
Because they're in one. In one.
It's the same. All of the textbooks and like books on cults that I have read talk about MLMs because it's the same psychology. It's a cult situation. But apparently my bridesmaid was like, oh, I already know all about this because my aunt has gotten really into this. Like we can't get her off the computer. Her like adult children like cannot get her to leave her house. Like she's been like sucked like hard. She's been hard pilled. Most of the people I talked to didn't know what Q was. They didn't know what adrenochrome was. And they would just brush me off and they'd be like, well, I don't know what that is. I don't believe in whatever it is that you're talking about. That doesn't apply to me. And they couldn't understand that it was connected. And, she was like, oh yeah, she said that all of the hurricanes that hit Florida in 2020, meanwhile, it's Florida. We always have hurricanes. She's like, all the hurricanes that hit Florida in 2020 were man-made by Jewish space lasers with the intent of sinking the state of Florida because DeSantis had given them too much freedom. And I'm at this point completely shooketh because like that is just feral anti-Semitism. Like that is
just out and out rampant.
Right. So close to me. So just like the slightest scratch under the surface, just like Jewish space lasers. And there's like I don't know the exact mechanism behind this, but I've heard of like basically a tactic that people like the KKK use on purpose and things that like possibly like Hitler and like people in World War II used as part of their conspiracy theory propaganda was that they would say something completely insane like Jewish space lasers, knowing that it was ridiculous, knowing that nobody was actually going to believe it, but because it's so funny and so like catchy, like it will spread very far. Like people will talk about it. We're talking about it right now. And you're not going to believe in Jewish space lasers, but now just because it's in the societal conversation, there's just this you begin to have a low level subliminal fear of whatever group is like the bad guy in that story. You know, like humans love stories. And so like, even if you know it's not true, subliminally, you're going to be like, oh, I don't know, you know, like over years and years, it's very powerful. And so it sounds ridiculous, but it is still dangerous.
Still. Yeah, absolutely.
And so like, she was like, oh yeah, my aunt already told me all about this. That must be what you're talking about. And like, she didn't believe in Jewish space lasers. My bridesmaid didn't, but she couldn't fully grasp like how serious it was or how dangerous it was, how anti-Semitic it was. And we're trying to plan a wedding as I'm trying to learn about QAnon.
Yeah.
During the pandemic where we're not really even sure we're going to be able to have a wedding. And so it's like on again, off again, on again, off again. And then we did end up being able to have the wedding. We got super lucky. We timed it like at the lowest point of Delta right before Omicron took off. And at the time we thought the vaccines were like 98% effective. And everybody at the wedding, it was outdoors. Everybody at the wedding was going to be vaccinated except for like the one table from my hometown. I had to uninvite my maid of honor for my wedding. I asked her not to come. Because like over
Yeah.
months, she's talking about 5G radiation. She's like refusing to get vaccinated. She was convinced that the vaccines were causing infertility. And I asked her, send me the articles, send me whatever it is that you were seeing about this. And she couldn't. There was nothing.
Right.
And, you know, and I was just like, don't show up. And my parents were not much better. My brother who lived at home with my parents was not much better. He told me at one point that like the CDC was lying to us, all the death numbers were made up, that we should just let the weak die. And I was like, fuck you. And I think it, like, in my heart, I have to believe that like we've talked about this years later, and I have to believe that he knows that that's wrong, but he still like refuses to like, he just doesn't want to talk about it. He refuses to like apologize for it outright. And I'm just like, fuck you. My dad has one lung and is over 65 years old and is a cancer survivor. So he was the absolute definition of high risk. None of them were social distancing. None of them were changing their lives in any way. They would sometimes wear a face mask. And when I told my parents, when we were planning the wedding, we're like, okay, based on everything that we've been looking at, we think we can have the ceremony. Nobody at the wedding was going to be over like 30 years old, except for my parents. Like none of my aunts and uncles were coming. And I was like, I cannot in good conscience have the wedding unless you guys are vaccinated. We're not going to require it for like all of the guests just because they're all already vaccinated. But like, you have to get vaccinated or else I understand that the risk is incredibly low, but like, you know, if dad were to get sick or something bad were to happen,
man has one lung,
just so that I can throw a party, you know, like that's just ridiculous. When there are other measures we could take, you know, and my mom told me to cancel the wedding. She was just like, well, then you guys should just elope. And like, without even like thinking about it, just immediately, well, then I think you guys should just elope. And I was like, no, no.
I love how it wasn't uninvite us. It was, you wouldn't possibly have a wedding without us.
Right. And and I didn't want to do that either because like everything was just insane. Like the like, it's insane that I had to give them an ultimatum. And then like, it's insane that this is the situation that we're in. And that like, you know, I'm the adult in the room when like they're supposed to be like the righteous, like evangelical, like, you know, honor your elders, and like they're the ones
love thy neighbor,
know who the Christian candidate is, and like they're the leaders of the community and like all this stuff. And I'm just like, you're like fucking killing people. And my dad thankfully understood. I don't think that he really thought that he needed to get vaccinated, but he understood that like it was important to me, and that if they did not, that it was going to irreparably damage the family dynamics. They are irreparably damaged, but like just even them saying that, like it's
I can't even
too late.
Imagine.
But he spent 3 days talking her into getting the vaccine, and they did get vaccinated. And we did have the wedding, but you know, instead of having to like worry about like the color of the spoons and like where to sit, like, you know, whoever, I was just hoping that nobody talked about Jewish space lasers to my in-laws, who are normal. And so it was just like insane and incredibly stressful. And then it got to a certain point where I was just like, I just need to make it through the wedding. Like, don't burn down every bridge. I burnt down the bridge with the 5G girl.
Well, and so your fiance was not from that area of Florida?
No. Well, no, he was from up a different part of Florida, and his family was like not a part of any of this. And honestly, like they
must have been a wild ride for him to watch.
Yeah, his family, I think that they have a better understanding now of what the situation was. My husband's always thought that my family is strange, that my friends are strange. Like he literally was just like, you grew up in a cult, like, okay, like, like get over it. Like I thought you knew that, like it's been a cult the whole time. But like I didn't know. He could see it because it was from the outside, but for me, like I was very much on the inside. And it was like immediately after the wedding, like 2 months after the wedding, we went to see his family for Christmas. And I feel so bad for them because his sister had such a beautiful wedding or Christmas, and like her home was so lovely, and we were getting to see like their new baby. And I'm having like a full blown like minty bee. And because I had just been like, I need to get through the wedding. Don't burn down every bridge. You don't fully understand what's going on. Like, you don't like, what is QAnon? Why are the Christians falling for it? Like, why is everybody falling for conspiracy theories? Like, maybe you're wrong. Maybe you're wrong. And so I just made it through the wedding. And then Christmas Eve, I get 2 text messages a day apart from 2 totally different people who do not know each other. One is from work, one is from undergrad. And they're almost like line by line the same exact text message. And they knew that I knew about QAnon because I've been ranting about it for like months now.
Because you're like in deep, but not in the way that in deep people are.
Exactly. Like, do you guys know what adrenochrome is? Like, oh my God. And like Donald Trump is a time traveler, but they were like, I'm home for Christmas. My dad is saying some QAnon shit. What do I do? And I was like, you're fucked.
Yeah.
I've been trying for years at this point, and I have not been able to talk a single person out of it. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I can tell you what is happening, but I can't tell you what to do about it. And I'm so sorry. And I'm so sorry. And it just, it hit me like an actual ton of bricks that now other people were having to deal with the same bullshit that I had been dealing with for so long. And it felt so supremely unfair. And I felt almost a physical snap. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It was like a physical, like,
no, totally.
snap.
Yeah. Like, and you literally snap. Yeah.
And I did not deconstruct like over time. I like in that moment. And I was like, it's not just conspiracy theories. It is because they are evangelicals. It is because of the church and the faith and like the Christianity that I was raised in. It is because of this that they are behaving this way. Look at the fruit, the false prophets. You will know them by their fruit. And like the fruit is fucking space lasers. So I physically snapped, and I was just at that point left completely with nothing, completely adrift, and did not know to call it deconstruction, did not know to call myself an evangelical, did not know that there were other people like me, I still fully didn't understand like why QAnon was connected to the conspiracy theories and everything. And it took me a very long time. And honestly, it was like TikTok and social media where I found people like April Ajoy was one of the first ones because she was making it funny. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't know other people thought this. And from her and other people, I was able to find reading recommendations. And like, I have read so many things, everything that I can get my hand on. And it took me probably a year to feel like I could have my feet under me again, which is super fun for the first year of marriage. And
totally.
Because you're left with nothing. And basically like where I'm at now, and like I'm trying to like kind of write a book about my personal experience and like the connection between conspiracy theories and evangelicalism, because a lot of people are talking about white evangelical nationalism, and they're even touching on conspiracy theories, but they're not talking about the actual personal toll of like what that is like and the honest why. Again, they're explaining what happened, but they're not, for me, it wasn't enough of an explanation on why. And the best thing that I have found to kind of like explain all of this is in the language of cult psychology. And so I've read books by Dr. Stephen Hassan, Dr. Janya Lalich, and Margaret Singer, and Robert J. Lifton. My homeboy, Robert J. Lifton, he's my favorite.
My homeboy.
Faves. And basically, Robert J. When you talk about cults, the what you think of with like Jonestown and Heaven's Gate and these places, the definition of a traditional destructive cult, according to, and these might be like outdated definitions, and it depends on how you're using the terms, but for my purposes, when you say cult, it's a central charismatic figure, a transcendent belief system, a system of control, and a system of influence. And that's not evangelicalism. You don't have a central charismatic figure. It's not even QAnon. Like, you have Q, but it's not even QAnon. There were several other cults that spun off of QAnon, like the Negative 48 cult and stuff, but that's not
Negative 48.
Yeah, that was like a whole thing.
I'm writing that down.
October of like 21, I want to say, there was a group of people who were following this guy who called himself -48 online, who was a numerology guy. Gematria is actually this, like, I think it's a Jewish practice of letters associated with numbers. And so like A is 1, B is 2, C is 3. And so I've listened to a little bit about this, but like when you go to like a bar mitzvah or something, a lot of times like you'll get like, I forget how much it is, but you'll get like $26, which is like a really weird amount. But like it's, if you add up the letters of Lahaim, it's 26. And so you get
Oh.
$26. So that's like what gematria is. But the -48 guy like has totally bastardized this. And
Of course.
he was claiming that he was receiving secret numerology messages from Trump in Trump's tweets by adding up the numbers of the letters of Trump's tweets, and then he would like decode them on like social media. And he had like over 100,000 followers or something. Like,
I'm
he was very
sure
popular,
he did.
and he was -48 because EVIL, evil, is 48. And so he's negative evil. And he convinced a bunch of people to meet him in person in Dallas on the anniversary of JFK's assassination. And they were promised that JFK Jr., who they think is still alive, and then also possibly JFK Sr., was going to like resurrect from the dead, declare Trump to be the rightful president of the United States. And then they were like running around downtown Dallas harassing homeless people because they think that like every famous person who's ever died is like actually just faking it. And so they'd find like a homeless guy and be like, it's Prince, and like take photos and stuff with him. And then they just like stayed in Dallas for like months, and they were living in like a Hilton and drinking out of a communal bowl of bleach and declaring each other to be the ambassador to South Africa and like various things, draining their bank accounts of like tens of thousands of dollars to support this -48 guy. So like that was a hardcore, actual destructive cult.
That's a literal cult. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Whoa.
like that is a cult. QAnon is something else. Evangelicalism, white evangelical nationalism is something else. And so the words that like Robert J. Lipton used is that like cults use a totalistic ideology, like an absolute worldview around whatever their like ideology is. And they center the veneration of this worldview on their charismatic leader. But you can have a totalistic ideology that is not centered on a charismatic leader. So you're still dealing with an absolute worldview, a totalistic ideology. And I like the word worldview there because that's the word that I heard my entire life growing up. The private Christian school that I went to advertises to this day on their website that they will instill a Christian worldview or a biblical worldview. They're literally advertising that they will indoctrinate your child into a totalistic ideology for you. And so
you have these probably love it. They're probably like, that's what I want to see.
Exactly. And the totalistic ideologies, they create something what Lifton called personal closure, and what Dr. Jana Lalich called bounded choice, where you view the world from a very specific lens, and it limits your options. So you have what Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the guy who wrote Sherlock Holmes, he had a quote where he says, once you've eliminated all of the impossible options, whatever's left, however improbable, must be the truth. But when you have a totalistic ideology, you've limited reality down to so many options. You've made part of reality impossible. So now whatever's left, even though it's improbable, must be the truth. So now a secret cabal of like Jewish elites or mole children or, gematria and like all this stuff is on the table because it's just improbable. And so conspiracy theories in a totalistic ideology, and that's just broad evangelicalism, which is a totalistic ideology, become absolutely inevitable because their conspiracy theories are just a way of explaining phenomenon and events through the perspective of a totalistic ideology. And one of the biggest tools that cults use, so cults recruit people and they trick people into joining. It's not like people go out of their way to join a cult, but they use thought reform to get you. And there's 8 characteristics of thought reform, according to Robert J. Lifton. And like loading the language, like speaking with like a particular language, mystic manipulation, and there's 8 of them, that's how they trick you to adopt the totalistic ideology. That's how they get you to adopt this worldview and to keep you in this worldview. And then one of the most powerful tools in all of this is moral panics.
Yes.
It's kind of almost defining of the totalistic ideology, which is why I say that like purity culture as a facet of the broader like white Christian patriarchal worldview is kind of like the core of the white evangelical nationalist totalistic ideology. And so you're very concerned about gender roles, and you're very concerned about like just sex, and you know the worst thing you can think of is like abortion and child sex trafficking, and the worse you can make the outside, the better you feel about yourself. And so if you believe in satanic blood rituals, you're just, you know, the worst thing you can possibly think of, well then that must be what's happening on the outside, because that makes you even better for fighting it. And absolute ends justify any means. Right. And so when you're talking about ritualistic blood sacrifices and or like murdering babies and abortion or hell, those are absolutes. You are justified in literally anything you want in order to combat that. And now you end up with dominionism, and you end up with like the combination of church and state and Christians like establishing a theocracy. And now you are looking at historical totalitarianism. Like you're looking at larger, and this is why it's scary when it's a part of the larger fabric of society, when it goes mainstream, because now you're talking, we are in fascism. And Dr. Paxton, he wrote a book called The Anatomy of Fascism, and he is a professor of history at Columbia, who specializes in Vichy France fascism. And he wrote, and it's a very difficult thing to define, fascism is. And he does a really good job. It's been a really long time since I read that book, but in that book, it's very interesting because he has phases. He has phases of fascism, and it's like 1 through 5. And like the 5th one is like the collapse of fascism, but like 1 through 4 are like the build up to it. And like we are firmly in a phase that we do not want to be in. Like I don't know, we're in like phase 3 or 4. Like
we're in one of those phases, but we're too far in. I don't like it.
No, it's not good.
Whatever phase we're in, I hate it.
And the book that I read by Dr. Robert J. Lifton, I think it's called like Thought Reform and the Psychology of Totalism, or Totalism and the Psychology of Thought Reform. And he's old. Like he was around in like the 1940s and 1950s, and he studied people who were coming out of communist, like when China was taken over by the Communist Party, he was like studying and doing case studies and talking to the men and women who were prisoners of war and escapees from like the Chinese thought reform programs and the thought reform prisons. And this is like how he developed his whole like model, was like studying these people who were under duress and like imprisoned and like put through these like thought reform programs. And like it's such an important book, and it's like such an incredible insight. There's like a whole section or a whole chapter where he talks about what it looks like to come out of a thought reform program, and like what a healthy psychology and like a deconstruction from that looks like. And I swear to God, it's a chapter that just like describes me. But what he's talking about, what he called brainwashing, and what like how some people describe brainwashing is like a prisoner of war, like a victim of spousal abuse, or something that involves like physical, which is a different kind of coercive persuasion than like joining the Moonies. You know, they're not tying you up. It's like a little bit different. Whereas like joining the Moonies or something is much more voluntary, but it's still that thought reform. It's unethical manipulation. And when you're talking about somebody like myself, who was indoctrinated from childhood, you are talking about something that is much more akin to brainwashing, because there's, you know, physical restraint. You don't have any other options. And they talk about somebody who like joins a cult and then leaves a cult. You adopt that totalistic worldview, and you kind of develop a cult persona. You use the language, you style your thoughts and your actions and things after like the group model. If you are lucky enough to escape that and deconstruct, you kind of revert back to your original worldview. You kind of just like go back to the person you were before. But if you are a victim of childhood indoctrination, there's nothing to go back to. and
Right.
you're left with nothing, and you have to
Right.
build an entire worldview, not only from nothing, but you have to dig out all of the lies that you've been told your entire life. You have to figure out what was the lie, what was true, and then build from the ground up again as an adult very rapidly. And like, this is part of the reason why it's so hard to leave a cult, because like that's an extremely difficult thing
Yes.
to do.
Yes. And
And that's
especially when you have to admit that everybody you've ever looked up to or everybody you've ever considered a leader either was lying to you or they believed it
yeah,
and were just wrong. And
yeah,
you've never experienced a world in which you're like, everybody I looked up to was just wrong the
yeah.
whole time.
And you end up with a lot of people who cult hop. So you go from one group to
Mhm.
another group, just trying to fill
Yes.
that void.
Yes.
I've seen people in my own life who like they don't handle it well, and they end up like turning to drugs and other things. But the other thing from that book that I thought was a very interesting takeaway for me was that um, the Red Scare. This was in 1940s, 1950s,
Yep.
like when communist China took over China, and you had the Cold War, and you had this was the rise of the Christian right, and there's a whole history about the rise of the religious right, with the Falwells and Tim LaHaye and the Council for National Policy and the Reagan administration, and it's like this whole history. But like it really kind of started with Billy Graham, who was like a little bit before that, and we are still dealing with the Red Scare. Like communism is the scariest thing that you can say,
Yep.
and nobody understands what it is. Nobody knows what communism is. The difference between like communism and like socialism and
Yes.
fascism, and like nobody knows. But communism is very scary. And if you send your kids to public school, they're going to teach you communism and like all of this stuff. And so you're still dealing with like the Red Scare because it was such an effective moral panic. And I think something that may have been lost kind of to time is that like in the 40s and 50s, you were getting all of these like news reports of people coming out of all these war prisoners coming out of China. And they had been um, in the military, like American military heroes who had then been in prison for 3 years, and they come out and they are talking about how much they love communism and how like imperialism is the devil, and like they've been brainwashed, and that was terrifying to the general public. And so they latched on to communism as the scary thing. Like communism is the problem, communism is scary. And they built an entire moral panic around this, when in reality, I think what they should have been afraid of was thought reform. And that's
Yes.
a much more difficult thing to understand and a much more nuanced topic to like, to worry about. So ironically, in their fear of a thought reform program, they essentially built their own thought
I
reform
was just
program.
about to say that. Yeah, like
Yeah.
they're so scared of it, they don't realize they're steeped in it.
Exactly. And we're still dealing with that today. And so you had like the moral panic of the Red Scare in the 50s, and then you had the satanic panic of the 1980s, and that is really
The
kind of what
Salem witch trials.
yeah, you go way back, you got the same, it's all over the place. But the 1980s is, you have like the Dobson dynasty, and you had that panic is kind of what set up our current, like what I grew up in the 90s and 2000s, where you had your own Christian movies, your own Christian books, your own Christian schools, your like
Mm.
it built an insular society kind of on the back of this satanic panic. And now we have hashtag Save the Children and QAnon and the new Sound of Freedom movie and this like child sex trafficking moral panic. Again, not to say that child sex trafficking isn't a serious issue, but like when you distract from the reality in order to serve essentially a political means,
Right.
you're not going to be making effective legislation to fight the core issues of sex trafficking, which involve like homelessness and substance
Right.
abuse.
Right. When
So
like your number one way of fighting child sex trafficking is just not being a Democrat.
exorcisms.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exorcisms. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's like that's a problem. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's why. And so for you personally, where does that leave you in terms of do you still consider yourself on the scale of Christian? Are you spiritual? Do you not know? Are you still trying to find out who you are as a person in that regard? Or like how far you want to deconstruct?
I have greatly stabilized, because there was definitely a period of time where I was not. And I don't know what to call myself exactly. It depends on who I'm talking to, because if I'm
Yeah.
talking to somebody who is a Christian,
Yeah.
I will call myself a Christian because fuck you. And
Yes.
because being raised in fundamentalism, I didn't know that there were other options. I didn't know that progressive Christianity existed, or I didn't know
Yes.
what theology was. And they spoon feed you just like the most childish bullshit.
Yep. And then they
Like,
tell you also you have to believe all of this or you're not a real Christian.
right. And like Adam and Eve were real people, and like Noah, like the whole world actually flooded, and none of this
Yep.
can be allegory. And so like once I deconstructed, I did find that there were progressive Christians, there were LGBTQ affirming churches.
Yep.
And so I will call myself a Christian because I I think I would have no problem being in those spaces.
Yeah.
And also as basically an affront to the evangelical mindset, to like remind
Yeah.
them that like, no, there is something else.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there's a God. I don't believe in hell. I don't believe in hell. I hope that there's a heaven and that there's some sort of afterlife. I'm not convinced of the divinity of Jesus Christ. I think that the teachings that we have from him are still valuable, and that there's a lot that you can get out of that. But I think that you also, it's, there are other voices and other figures that are almost as much or more deserving of study. And
Yeah.
so for me, I've been kind of collecting those figures, which include a lot of Christians. So like
Yeah.
Dietrich Bonhoeffer and Martin Luther King Jr. and Soren Kierkegaard. And I don't know much about any of these people. I have some of their books, but I haven't really read any of them. That's going to be kind of something that I just do for the next, rest of my life. I'm also very interested in Gandhi, because apparently MLK and Bonhoeffer were also like super interested in Gandhi. So it's like, you find somebody and whoever they looked at,
Yeah.
like I can study those people as well. But, and something I think about is like, I've tried to read, I'm a math brain, right? So like I've
Right.
tried to read some philosophy and things, and it's just like, no, I need some spark notes.
Yeah, I am not a math brain, so not a math brain at all, so can't relate, but I might be able to read those books and write the Spark Notes version, perhaps.
Okay. Together we're unstoppable.
Yes.
But I read a biography on Soren Kierkegaard, who was a 1840s Danish theologian philosopher who's the father of existentialism. And he literally was kind of combating his own wave of nationalism. And he's famous for trying to bring Christ to Christendom. And so I think he's got some really good shit. And he really influenced Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was another theologian who like literally tried to kill Hitler and like all this stuff. So when I read a biography by Stephen Backhouse, called Kierkegaard, about Soren Kierkegaard and just his life, because I couldn't understand his philosophy. So I was like, I'll read a biography. And he talks about how he basically had like a philosophy arch nemesis. Hopefully Stephen Backhouse never listens to this, and because I'm going to bastardize this. But he was like, I think it was Hegel. I think it was Hegel. There was a philosopher Kierkegaard had beef with. And so like Hegel would write a book, and then Kierkegaard would write a book in response to that. And then Hegel would write a book in response to that. And they'd go back and forth. And so when you're reading these like books that I already don't understand, of like 1840s theology, philosophy, if you don't also read like Hegel's contemporary works, you're only seeing half of the picture, and you're not going to have a full understanding of like what Kierkegaard was talking about. And then like we expect to understand what is going on in a 2,000-year-old book that was written in like at least 3 different languages, and has like historical and translational like situations that like we can't even begin to comprehend. So like so that's where I'm
there
at
should
with
be
things.
like pre-Bible, like intro to the Bible. Here's the background of some of these cultures. Here's the background of these languages. Here's the background of these people. Here's the part of the world they're talking about. You got to read these first, so that when you read the Bible, maybe you can understand what they're talking about.
And that's been something that's been very interesting for me since deconstruction, is like I find this stuff interesting now to read to read about the Bible, not to read the Bible, but to like from people who who have PhDs and actually like understand the different languages and the different histories and things. And it's so completely eye-opening compared to like what we were raised with, that it's not even the same animal.
Yeah, I love reading about the Bible. I've read the Bible and I don't have any desire to go back and read it again. But and so what does your husband think about all this? Is he religious? Is he deconstructing? Is he non-religious? Does he just kind of let you do your thing?
He has kind of had to let me do my thing because I didn't understand what was happening. He definitely didn't understand what was happening because he wasn't raised as an evangelical even. He was raised as a Catholic and his family is all Catholic, but they're not like devout Catholic. They're almost more like culturally Catholic. And so they don't relate. And he had a much more like healthy, stable, like, youth. So
yes. That's how my boyfriend is. I told him about the rapture and he did not believe me. He literally thought I was making it up to fuck around with him.
Oh my God. Yeah. No. Okay. So my poor husband, he's had his experiences though, because my family like did not welcome him. Like he's a Catholic and like Catholics aren't real Christians. And so, and then also like, it's a fine line between like kind of the purity culture evangelical stuff and then just like my family's personal dysfunction. And I try to separate them.
It's tough too though, because honestly, sometimes they're hand in hand.
It is very deeply connected, but like I genuinely think that my parents, they're very controlling. I think that they thought they were going to get to pick my husband. Because I had a friend who got married when she was like 19 and like her parents like basically like handpicked somebody and like she's very happily married and they have like a wonderful, lovely life. And I love that for them. But like my parents saw that and like thought they were going to get to do the same thing. But I'm like 24 out of college, not 19 years old, like, and so like they did not accept my husband when we first started dating. But several years later, like right before we got married, apparently I was not in the room. My mom says to my husband, like it's totally normal and acceptable to say, that, oh yeah, I had really prayed. I had really prayed, that Jesus would come back before, Cynane was old enough to start dating. But I guess like you're the next best option.
Whoa. Like, she's like, I would literally rather be raptured than have you as a son-in-law. But I guess if God decided it wasn't my time.
It was more of a, I really had hoped that my daughter would die a virgin, but I guess like this is okay.
Wild shit. That's what. And so my boyfriend was raised totally secular, like very similar, culturally Catholic, has never been to a church in his life, has never read the Bible, never even saw VeggieTales until last week.
Oh my God.
I introduced him to like Larry the cucumber.
They should form a support group with each other.
We should, yes, support group for the partners of deconstructing former Fundies. And so he came home a couple nights ago and he's like, you're not going to believe this, because he doesn't really get involved, but he kind of does. Like he doesn't really get involved in what I do, but he likes to hear about it because he had no idea this whole realm existed anywhere until he moved to down south. And he was like, so I was talking to somebody last night. He's like, I overheard him talking about church and like being a Christian. He's like, I've heard him talk about Christianity before. He's like, so I asked him, so like, tell me, like, what are your thoughts? And he's like, oh yeah, I'm a Christian. I believe in God. I believe in like the rapture. I believe that he's coming back and blah, blah. And he's like, okay. And he goes, do you believe in aliens? And the guy goes, no, why would I believe in aliens? And my boyfriend is like, well, why don't you believe in aliens? And he goes, well, I haven't seen any evidence whatsoever. And he said he's never like wanted so badly to be like, listen to yourself. Like, you're so close. He's like, I just wanted to, he was so close. He's like, I never would have thought to have that conversation with a human being in my life, except he's like, you've introduced me to this world of people who think that any day now they're just going to get vacuumed up into heaven with or without their clothes, depending on which denomination you're a part of.
No. Tell your boyfriend next time he's in that situation to tell the Christian, because this is a thing, that aliens don't exist. But the government is releasing information about aliens now, so because they know the rapture is imminent. And then when all of the Christians are raptured, the government can claim that it was aliens. And so everybody will still believe in the Antichrist.
Yes.
So that's actually what's happening.
That's, you know what? I was going to say the same thing. I'm glad we're on the same page. But it's so interesting. You know, I talk to people who like have survived cults and were raised former fundamentalists and everything all the time. I almost find it more fascinating to talk to people who have never heard of this stuff before.
Yeah.
Because you're like, you mean like you just got to wear whatever you wanted? Like you just like you weren't like condemning anyone to hell by wearing like shorts?
You haven't, how many times were you called a whore as a 10-year-old?
Yeah. How many fingers did you have to have on your
how many fingers? Like how,
yeah. Like how, like what like it's just bananas. And that's when I realize, like, oh, I was indoctrinated too. Like, I talk to people all the time who were indoctrinated, but I forget until I relate to their story. Like, I related to so much of what you're talking about that I was like, oh yeah, like, oh yeah, that was me. It's just bananas. And so do you feel like more hope for the future? Do you feel bleak? Do you feel a mix of both? Like, I know that you're probably still, because if I'm doing the math right, which I'm bad at math, so I might not be. You got married in 2021?
Mm-hmm, the end of 2021.
Okay. Because the only reason I know that is because I caught Omicron Christmas of 2021. So I was like, Omicron. Yeah, right before then. So do you feel like, are you still just really in the middle of figuring it out? Are you just letting it kind of happen? What are you thinking?
I feel much better about things because, and it was like neurotic. And I think it's partially like being raised in fundamentalism, partially my personality personally, and my, you know, like I'm an engineer and stuff. So like I neurotically read so much that I finally feel like I have like a grasp of what's going on. And so like, and that's why I'm speaking on podcasts like this, and I am writing a book about all of this because I struggled so much and it was so hard for me, and I consumed so much information, and I know that like most people probably are not going to do that or can't do that, and I feel like I can hopefully explain some things, and if not, I can at least commiserate with other people who went through similar situations, because like I feel like I lost my entire family, my parents, my brother, my best friend 100% lost that one. And then like several other friendships, like my other bridesmaids, like we just don't talk anymore, you know? So like I lost everyone. And, you know, there are people in my situation, or that, you know, people who just lost like their mom. Just losing your mom, one person, that's catastrophic.
Yes.
And I try not to become like numb to it or whatever, but I feel like I'm in a much better place, and that I have like a better grasp of what's going on. I can put terms to things like the problem is white evangelical nationalism, white Christian nationalism, and the like I said, the language around like cult psychology and stuff has like really helped me just like understand things that are going on. And I like I said, I haven't necessarily been able to redeem any of those relationships yet, but it has given me immense peace.
Yes.
To just the understanding for myself. And even if we have to go like completely no contact, like I feel more justified in that. And anybody who's going through this, that was one of the hardest things, is like, because I kept thinking like, I have to be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe things aren't as bad as they appear. And like, for anybody who's like gone through anything similar, like it is that bad. It is probably 100%. Worse.
Yes.
It is connected to anti-Semitism and white supremacy. And it is all of the worst things that you can think of. It's probably worse than you think that it is. And if you have to go into contact, like you should be fully justified in doing that. But it's so hard, especially when you don't understand what's going on, to make that decision. So that's like why I'm here.
And what would you say if there's somebody listening to this and they're like, oh my God, that sounds like my family? And because I know a lot of people who like soft cut off their family, where they never said, we're done talking. They just,
that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, where they just like slowly phased out of talking to them. What would you say to them in terms of how to navigate that type of, or those types of waters, I suppose? Like what can they look forward to? What should they be aware of? What are your general thoughts on that process?
One, I am not a mental health professional.
Oh, true. Yeah,
I do not take advice from me. I can tell you what my experience has been, and like from what I have read, what I think are things that I want to try. But basically, like when you're talking to somebody, especially who's in like a conspiracy theory mindset, which is also just kind of like the white evangelical mindset, you know, if they believe in the rapture and in hell, and they're homophobic and like these things, or if they believe in, you know, microchips and space lasers, you cannot typically rationalize somebody out of those beliefs. And that's what I initially tried to do. It was like, oh, look at all these facts. Like, let me show you all of these things. Like, I'll put a PowerPoint together. And you can't rationalize anybody out of these beliefs. You can't call anybody a dumbass.
Right.
Which I am physically incapable of. So that right off the bat, I'm just screwed.
Right. It's so tough because you're like, I know that it'll be worse for everyone if I say what I want to say, but man, do I want to say it. Man, do I want to say it. And I know that I'm the only one restraining my thoughts. Nobody else in this room is restraining their thoughts.
And that's the thing, is like, you know, it's unfair. The whole thing, these are my thoughts. It is unfair. It is unfair that any of us have been put into the situation that we have to be like, if you want to maintain any kind of relationship, it is on you. You have to make the accommodations. And honestly, have you seen the movie, what's it called? Bird Box?
Bird Box.
Where like if you see the space monsters, you like become suicidal.
Yes. I was gonna say, I feel like Bird Box. There's a bunch of bird titled movies that came out recently. I was like, I know I've seen it. Yeah. Yes.
Especially in studying the hearts of the conspiracy theories, like the worst parts of the conspiracy theories, like going deep into like child sex trafficking and the anti-Semitism and like just this much hatred. I feel like I have just been staring at the Bird Box monsters, and I've been stuck in that moment. Like, right.
Yes. Like when you are surrounded by people who believe this whack shit, like just being honest, this whack shit, you start to feel like you must be the whack one at a certain point.
But you're not. And that's the message. Like you're not. And preserve your peace, number one. Like if you have to go no contact, if you cannot maintain that relationship, if you can't, because it is a sacrifice.
It is.
You are doing it for them. You're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it for them to keep them in your life. If you can't do that, that is okay. And everybody's different, and I don't want to give advice, but like, I'll cut that bitch off.
That bitch out of your life. It's like, I live with her. I don't care. Cut that bitch out of your life.
You know, so like, if you have to walk away from that, like you have to walk away from that. And it is that bad. Like, there's so much second guessing, and that's so unfair.
Yes.
But if you can be that bigger person, and like you want to try to preserve this relationship, rely on the emotional connections. Don't lecture, don't try to like logic them out with facts and things. Remind them about why you are important to them so that they care about your opinion, and ask probing questions. Don't like lecture, but like, and it's over the course of months or years. Like, there is no easy answer. There is no quick solution. Over the course of months or years, just ask probing questions, make them question things for themselves. And eventually, hopefully, if you're still in their life, you're a person that they know that they can come to when they do have questions.
Yes.
And
that was my next thing, is like, if you can tell they're starting to deconstruct a little bit, just be there.
Yeah. And there are lots of resources. Like I said, when I started, like, I didn't know that there were resources or what to call it. There's resources for yourself. And then like, if you can get them to read a book, like, you've made it. Like, there's lots of like books that you can recommend. And I'm going to like plug here, because I have on my website, takingoffthetinfoilhat.com,
which I'll link in the description.
all of my references, all of my resources. So I have my reading list, which is every book that I have read since deconstructing. And I have
That's
them
awesome.
categorized by like, if you have questions about like hell or LGBTQ or the conspiracy theories or the white supremacy or the nationalism, like there are books about every single one of the, or the cults. That's a huge one. There's books about all of this.
Yes.
And then there's also books are hard. Most of them are free on Hoopla, so you can listen to them as audiobooks. There's also incredible podcasts like this one. I mean, if you're already here, like you probably already know that there's a lot of stuff. You're good, but I have podcast recommendations. There's even some like deconstruction music stuff, but the reading list is like the core of it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I just have one more question for you. I want to be respectful of your time. I recognize I took like an hour longer than I said I would of your time.
No.
When Obama becomes I'm just kidding. I was talking with you. No. When Obama becomes the Muslim king of the United States, this is very serious. I need you to be serious with me now. No, this is Cynane. This is
it's me.
I'm the problem. It's me. Man, Taylor Swift conspiracies are another thing that just drive me up the walls. That's like its own
also
thing.
Her Midnight album. I swear to God, she deconstructed like her Midnight album.
Yeah. Yes. Oh yeah, I listened to that and I was like, "Girl, are we on the same vibe right now? Like, what's going on?" Yeah. So, and also, queen. I was not convinced. There's that documentary she released around like the Miss Americana or whatever.
Yeah.
There's one scene where she's like, "And as a Christian," and I was like, you are a singer, not an actress. That was the least convincing PR bullshit I've ever seen. Like, bitch, no.
She's a Christian. Like we're Christians. I'm a Christian.
Yeah, exactly. She's a Christian. Like I pray when there's turbulence on a plane. You know what
I
I'm
bet
saying?
she loves Kierkegaard.
I bet she does. Oh my God, yes, for sure.
Yeah.
But this has been a really fantastic conversation. I really appreciate your time. This has been a surprisingly important conversation as well, because like I think everybody's story is very, very important. I think everybody's deconstruction journey is so it's personal, but at the same time, I get so many messages about people who hear themselves in the story of the people that I'm talking to. But what I think is especially important about your story and this episode is because you did the best job I've ever heard of explaining all of these conspiracy theories. Like I was well aware of what they were and I still learned so much, and you explained it in such a way that was accessible and understandable and Googleable. You didn't explain it in this way where like I feel like I have to have a degree in some kind of, chemistry or something to understand. Like you explained it in a way that I feel like everybody needs to hear. And so thank you for doing that. All the research you did, as painful as it probably was, as confusing and scary as it probably was, I feel like you've got this amazing gift of explaining these things to people that people need to hear about, and they need access to it, and they need to understand what it is. Because people say, everybody fears what they don't know, but sometimes you don't know enough about it to be afraid. And these are the type of things where I think it's the opposite. I think people don't know enough about it to be as afraid as they should be about it.
I'm here to scare people.
Yes. Well, and I recognize like saying that makes me sound like a conspiracy theorist, but I'm telling you.
Yeah. I've got like a web on my wall. Yes. Like I've gone full Charlie from The Office.
Yes.
Or from
and so but I'm grateful that you are here and you're making a website and you're writing a book and you're linking these resources, and I will put all of those things in the I was about to say the chat, you can tell I live stream sometimes, in the description, because I think everybody needs to take a look at it. They need to fall down that rabbit hole. They need to learn about these things. And yeah, I was going to say, join us. We're starting a cult. So if you'd like to sign up.
I threaten to do that all the time.
Yes. Yeah. I always wonder that. I'm like, at what point do I develop so many clubs related to this stuff that I become a cult leader on accident? Like, what does that look like? But yeah, thank you so much for your time. I said all that to say thank you so much for your time. And I really enjoyed talking to you.
No, thank you. That's all like incredibly kind of you to say. Thank you so much. And like, thank you for your platform and like having all of these discussions and things. It's been really nice meeting and talking to you.